It is great to be back in Oxford. I did do my finals in these buildings, but I have literally no memory of it. I think I must have been high on Pro Plus at the time, but it is wonderful to be back, and not only because of many happy memories, but also to be in a city that is central to so many energy breakthroughs. We know this in 1976, Professor John Goodenough formed a research group from around the world to tackle that an intractable problem of how to make batteries rechargeable. And these great minds struggled. They had to call out the fire brigade when experiments went wrong. But of course, in 1980, they published their findings in Materials Research Bulletin. The world took notice. The lithium-ion battery changed the world, and it meant that officials can pester ministers at any time, day or night. So a wonderful breakthrough, but not for those who do sometimes value some downtime. So many energy innovations have sprouted from this academic powerhouse, from nuclear fusion research at Culham to Professor Henry Snaith's new understanding of perovskites, which could transform solar power, such an incredibly interesting technology. And it is harnessing the value of this sort of world-changing innovation that we want to see right across the UK, and particularly in this energy portfolio. And that's why we've set out in this government the biggest ever increase in public research and development investment, £3 billion more invested every year by 2021. And it is that focus on innovation, research, development, commercialisation, which underpins the industrial strategy that hopefully all of you have got a copy clutched close to your heart, looking at how we invest in Britain's historical strengths to create the high-growth firms and well-paid jobs that essentially redress many of the imbalances in our economy and make sure that we are fit for the future. And our modern industrial strategy doesn't just celebrate development, it celebrates ideas, which is why it's so great to be hosted by Aurora today, a relatively new energy research company trying to do things differently, and one that has already grabbed so much mind space and grabbed a leading position across Europe. And that was one of the reasons we tapped into one of Aurora's founding directors to ask for his wisdom and his experience of the energy sector to lead the independent cost of energy review, something Greg Clark, who sends his apologies, commissioned as really a no-holds-barred to look at how we deliver more affordable energy, how we keep the lights on, as the saying goes, whilst decarbonising, how we create innovation, and how we balance those relationships and those responsibilities between the public sector and the market. And the review has sparked a debate, a very vibrant debate, if I might say, about how we actually get to markets where active consumers, not producers, are central, where the pyramid of supply and distribution is turned upon its head, where we realise the potential of the investments we've been making now for many years in new clean energy technologies, and where we implement ideas and spending according to a framework. And one of the frameworks we've been using a lot in the Clean Growth Strategy, which I authored last year, is the idea of a triple test, that investment in this space makes sense if it decarbonises, if you can see a cost trajectory that means you don't burden consumers with expensive innovations over the long term, and where you actually create and leverage a strategic innovation that means you can export that technology globally. And since Dita's review published, we have also published the Industrial Strategy White Paper, which again re-emphasised the importance of energy to our economic success and showed how a reliable, affordable and smart energy system provides the backbone for a stronger, fairer and more productive society. And how new technologies, AI, big data, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, are not just disruptive in their own sector, but are also hugely disruptive to the energy sector as well, but also transformational, providing opportunities. And how creating the conditions for success for fair competition is so central to innovation. And also, frankly, how the energy systems are central to the broader challenge of clean growth, one of the four principles, if you like, the principles that are there in the industrial strategy. And really, I suppose, an energy system that underpins and benefits from and accelerates the transformation of our economy. And Dieter's review covered very eloquently many of these arguments, and much of his diagnosis, I would say, is compelling, articulated brilliantly. He talks about the disruptors that are coming along in this sector, the move from passive to active demand, more and more zero marginal, low-cost clean generation that, as we're now buying at prices unimaginably low compared to just a few years ago. Access to cost-effective storage technologies at scale, linking in electric mobility into the grid, working out how that is both a producer and a provider of charge. And Dieter basically rightly says that these changes are happening regardless of what government does. Whether we like it or not, this is the way the market is moving. And so for me, the job of government is to re-examine the bits that we do, the bits of the market that we are involved in, the frameworks, the policies, the regulation that we put in place to make sure that they are fit for purpose, that they encourage this innovation, they increase competition, and they don't have unintended consequences down the road. Quite a large order, actually, for ministers. And I think if we manage, though, the reason this is so exciting, if we manage these changes well, that this historic tension between cost, CO2, and security becomes irrelevant. It's a little bit like with the conversation we have about clean growth, where we'd always imagined that a green future was a, hunker down in the caves with the wind turbines on future. Recessions are really good for cutting carbon emissions, and there are still politicians out there who, frankly, I think would rather like that to be the case. But actually, we know, if you look at what the UK has done, when it has decarbonised more and grown faster than any other G7 nation since 1990, that these two things go hand in hand. And it's the same with the age-old energy trilemma. And of course, if it's the UK's innovators who develop the technologies to achieve those goals, we reap those industrial and economic benefits, bringing home the benefits of the world's pivot to this low-carbon future in a way that generates highly productive jobs and growth at home. So Dieter's review, I think, brings that challenge to life, and without getting ahead or front-running the response to the consultation, which only closed just a few short weeks ago, I did want to dwell on 3 of his findings, not all 68 of them, don't worry. But the first was the necessity, the potential, but it is a necessity for more active management of the system. The huge increase in distributed generation, the opportunity for more demand-side response, and the potential for creating new demands for electric heating creates a requirement for a less passive local grid. And in a way, that's rather a frightening prospect. Grid management is hard enough in the current top-down system. The idea of having, intermediates and end states of supply and demand, I think, is incredibly challenging. And so Dieter's proposal for the system of neutral regional systems operators is extremely interesting, and it's part of the process that we're already going through, which has already seen us create a much more independent systems operator role for National Grid. Dieter's review challenged us whether and how we should go further. The network industry has come forward with some initial proposals, which we're looking at, many of them suitably ambitious, but we will be working closely to ensure that these go beyond business as usual and deliver the framework that we need to move us to this future. For me, we have to get this right. And secondly, Dieter's eye-catching proposal for the equivalent firm power auction was really worth dwelling on. And when considering this, I am actually mindful that many of the tools are working well. I know we've taken a fair share of criticism for how we got here, but if you look at what the tools are delivering, CFD is delivering offshore wind at £57 per megawatt hour with every prospects of further reductions, and with a tail of industry that is being created as part of that supply chain right across the UK. The capacity market is giving confidence to industry that there is no risk to supply at keener and keener prices. And of course, the beast from the East Mark I tested the resilience of the system right across Europe and in the UK, and I think there are lessons to be learned. But overall, our gas and electricity systems proved robust and responsive, and the market frameworks we had in place provided the grid with the tools they needed, although I think the terminology around intraday deficit warnings perhaps is a little alarmist for what it actually is, but that's a conversation we have to have. And these are successes that we should be celebrating. But Dieter's challenge is, how do we evolve today's arrangements so they are fit for this pace of change and this end state that we want to see going forward? And the capacity market obviously is a key part of that evolution. So later this year, we will be conducting a formal review to mark 5 years since its introduction, asking some key questions. Have we got the penalty regime right? Are the outcomes of the market aligned not just with the security of the energy system, but with the triple test I described and with the ambition we have in the industrial strategy? Should it be open to other new technologies like renewables, as we are seeing in Ireland? How do we include battery technology into this mix? How do we work with demand-side response and small-scale gas installations, which have already confounded earlier expectations? And understanding and answering these questions, I think, will help simplify the system in line with DITA's recommendations, whilst maintaining robust energy security and delivering on our triple test. But as we consider these changes, we have to essentially create a market structures and regulation that continue to make the UK one of the leading destinations for energy investment. And I think that clarity of regulatory structure and the confidence, if you like, in the system are a hugely important part of that. And I think as we look to the future, it's worth reflecting on the work that we're doing now, some of the work which is around how we get well-regulated competitive markets that we passionately believe are the way to deliver value and service for customers, but to work for customers in a way that they perceive industry should do. We've seen huge improvements in the efficiency of our home energy system thanks to the smart regulation and insulation measures. I've given lie to the argument that all this stuff we do, investing in the future of energy, is somehow putting up prices. Whilst we've seen a policy price increase, bills have gone down in the average household because of excellent improvements in energy efficiency. And as we've made clear in the Clean Growth Strategy, we want to build on that success. I'll be reviewing the eco-obligation very shortly, which I want to pivot as much as possible to helping those living in fuel poverty, making sure also that it provides a much better route to market for innovation technology in the home efficiency space. We're regulating so that landlords have to ensure the homes they let are cheaper to run. We've exempted many of our most energy efficient industries from many of the levies that we have brought forward. And we've also taken tough decisions since 2015 to cut subsidies whilst focusing resources on strategically important sectors like offshore wind and nuclear. And just this month, you may have seen that I brought forward the price cap legislation with very strong cross-party support, always an alarming thing for a politician. This is not an attempt to set energy prices in Westminster. This is an attempt to help the market speed up its evolution to a more competitive marketplace. We have a problem in this market, as in so many others, which is asymmetry of customer information, a group of highly enabled, digitally savvy consumers who are able to take advantage of the switching deals that are on offer given the new entrance into the market. And then a much larger group of those who are not as aware or as able to take advantage of those opportunities, and worryingly tend to be older, less wealthy, less educated, often more vulnerable. And we know that the market is working hard with its regulator to address many of those problems, but what we want to do is make sure that that acceleration it actually continues, which is why we're bringing forward a time-limited, intelligent intervention in the market to help reset this market working for consumers. And it's part of a huge other package of work that is coming forward: smart meter rollout, faster switching, half-hourly settlements, my data portability that means that switching will be almost instantaneous and extremely easy to do. And DITA has made clear proposals in this area about what the cap should include. It is quite rightly being developed by Ofgem. I know Dermot is here, but I'm sure they will be listening carefully to DITA's recommendations and when they bring forward the cap. But that cap will be in place by the end of this year. DITA's review also makes absolutely clear that government has an important role to play in new nuclear. And DITA calls it a societal choice as to whether to invest in nuclear. But for us, it's a little more than that. For us, nuclear has a crucial role to play in creating a diverse, reliable energy supply that reduces our CO2 emissions, creates a cost trajectory that we can see going forward, and contributes enormously to the industrial strategy, to the creation, if you like, of exportable innovation and capability. And I have no doubt that nuclear is a vital part of the mix, both in the UK and for the global community, to meet its Paris commitments. but it is also a sector that can deliver innovation, growth, and high-quality jobs for the economy. But to get these benefits, we have got to get costs down, and this is a joint partnership between government and industry. And for me, it's about innovation. It's about understanding how new technologies and techniques, whether it's digitization, modular manufacturing, whatever it is, can help simplify and standardize the nuclear new build process and potentially find new markets for that technology in a modularized state. And I'm extremely mindful of the role of government in supporting new nuclear, and we're studying the results of the NAO report carefully. If we can get this right, we can maintain our position at the forefront of nuclear innovation. And that, for me, is an example of the clean growth grand challenge in action. But whether it's nuclear or the rest of the energy supply, we have got to think hard about the policy and regulatory changes that we bring forward and be mindful of the unintended consequences that can happen, not just currently, but over a decent period of time going forward. And the government's ambition is for the UK to have the lowest energy costs in Europe for both households and businesses, whilst delivering on our CO2 targets, that framework that we were the first country in the world to put in place and one against which we are delivering, and ensuring security of supply. And we don't know how markets will look in 15 years' time. There are so many disruptive technologies out there, from digitization, AI, the continued galloping fall in the costs of clean technology. And for me, this is the most exciting moment in the energy industry in the UK since privatization. And this change will only accelerate going forward. More renewables, coal off the system by 2025, increasing amounts of distributed energy, more storage, more demand side, more local generation. Again, inverting this pyramid from passive consumers and the top-down approach to energy moving up, down, bilaterally in all sorts of directions. And that's before we confront the challenges that a more electrified heating system may place. You'll know if you look at the clean growth strategy, we're looking at what a hydrogen pathway looks like, what increased electrification looks like, the pick and mix solution. There are radical changes coming forward that will hugely impact on our investment decisions that we want to take. And for me, central planning of anything, whether it's an economy or an energy system, means taking often poor choices for short-term ends and stifling innovation. And the way to get beyond that, for me, is to put the consumer, not the producer, at the heart of energy policy. And firms who create value for consumers, whether they're large energy-intensive industries or little old ladies paying on standard variable tariffs, the firms that create the value and deliver the service for those consumers, not the firms who are best at lobbying government, are the ones who are most rewarded by investment and by market share. And also a system where market participants who innovate and can reduce both costs and emissions over time thrive. And that, I think, is the challenge that we all face, whether it is government, regulators, or indeed incumbents. That is the market that we want to see coming forward. But again, if we get it right, the astounding opportunities that are out there, both in solving our own energy problems and solving the energy problems of the world, are just immense. Helping the world's poorest countries never build a coal-fired power station, despite how attractive the deal might be, with all the attendant distribution charges, but moving straight to a distributed renewable policy, using some of our climate finance to make that happen. If we can unlock that future, then the opportunity for UK-based innovation, economic growth, and job creation is absolutely immense. And that, again, I pivot back to the industrial strategy. That's at the heart of the industrial strategy. That's where the funding is coming from the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. And people in the room may know about the Faraday Challenge, the first beneficiary of one of the major investments to come out of that fund. Taking a place where we have a comparative advantage in technology, where we have an industry that is working from a position of strength. We already manufacture 1 in 5 of the electric vehicles sold in Europe, where there is an overflow benefit into the renewables industry, where distributed storage is what will actually unlock the possibilities going forward, and bringing it all together in a public-private way that drives jobs and growth and innovation and ultimately productivity. And so this ambition of a clean, low-cost, innovative energy supply that works for customers, creates strong supply chains, really is built on incredible innovation and knowledge and development and investment, just like we saw in Professor Goodenoug's lab. That, I think, is the prize that is out there for us. And ultimately, we want to seize that opportunity, create, develop, if you like, those long-term commercial advantages in the UK, but make sure that when we commercialise them and bring them to market, that IP is also kept in the UK and contributes to our economy going forward. Thank you very much.